Hey guys, my name is Turley. Welcome back to another Rut Tester video. Ho ho ho! Here we go. What's up, my dudes? You know the Spency boy couldn't hold back. You know I had to come back in here and do another Rut Tester video on MXGP 3. We're going back like 3 or 4 years here to see the greatest terrain deformation system in any milestone game, right? God, you gotta love how they literally start like Mike Alessi on very easy difficulty mode. You gotta love that shit, dog. Pretty sure it's that way in every single milestone game. Like, it don't matter. The AI is going to take off full throttle all the way down the start straight, even on the easiest difficulty in the entire game, dude. Which makes it really difficult to try to get out front because you got furthest 59,000th gate on the outside when you don't run qualifying and all that shit, right? So it makes it kind of difficult to get out front and show the track off here, right? But let's see what we can do. You can kind of get a good look at it a little bit. Chilling in a bronze position here. We got a little bronze, little third place. Oh, we moved up to silver. Okay. Should be able to get a decent look at it now. Let me try to cheese this dude real quick. There we go. So yeah, we're going to be running full laps on this track right here. I did have somebody comment on the last MXGP3 Rut Tester video, and he said something along the lines of like, yo, Spencer, why don't you just go in there and run like 10 laps and then restart the race? Implying that it was going to keep the terrain deformation from the previous race. And I tried that, and it does not do that. I got in here and ran like 5 or 6 laps and then tried to like restart it, right? And it does not carry over. It resets the terrain deformation on the track when you restart the actual race. It may not do that in time attack. I'm not sure. Time attack, you may be able to go in there and run, 300 laps with terrain deformation on, but the problem is you don't have all the other bikes on the track. That's the problem with, trying to go in there on time attack, so it would be way more time consuming for me to go in here and try to get like the most amount of terrain deformation humanly possible on a track, right? This is pretty much the best way to do it. Just come in here in the old Grand Prix and, you got a full gate of riders, run the maximum amount of laps, 20 laps, and that's the most simple way to see the best the most terrain deformation in the game. This track right here is pretty interesting because it kind of starts off even not having the rain mode on or wet track or anything. The track already has a couple little, kind of little mud puddles on it, and you can kind of see the track's a little more already. You can already see the terrain deformation on this track on lap 2 quite a bit, right? So this is a little bit of a different story than the track was on there before. I think this one's going to show, definitely visually is going to show it off quite a bit more than the previous Rut Tester video that I did on this game. So, there's certain tracks that kind of have like a little bit more of a wetter vibe to the track, giggity, right? Just by default, even when you're on the standard normal, weather condition mode of a track, some tracks are just a little more of a wet, kind of muddy compound. Some of them have little mud puddles. Some of them are more dry. Some of them are more like sandy. Some of them, they're a little more like brownie mix dirt vibe, which is different than this. So all the different kind of tracks kind of have a slightly different vibe to them there in a sense. And it seems to be creating somewhat of a different kind of terrain deformation here. At least visually seems to be making, somewhat of a different kind of deformation vibe going. So we'll see what it does, but I'm not going to run, every single lap of a 20-lap race on a motocross track, or this video is going to literally be like 40 minutes long. What I'm going to do is like run the first 5 laps and then skip to like lap 10 and then run 5 more laps and then skip to the end so that you kind of get an idea on what it's doing without actually having to sit here while I ride literally 20 laps on a motocross track, right? So that would be a little insane, I would say. You can see the ruts coming out of that corner a little bit. But yeah, man, holy crap. I mean, that's the three biggest things I can tell that I like personally right away better about MXGP 20 or MXGP 3 versus MXGP 2020 is the speed of MXGP 3 I like better than MXGP 2020. The jumping, the jump sizes, how far you come off the ground, how much you jump up in the air. That's another thing I like better about MXGP 3 than MXGP 2020. And then also the terrain deformation, obviously, is another thing I like. Whoa, Spency boy. It's another thing I like better about MXGP 3 than MXGP 2020. So it's pretty insane, man. I think a lot of you guys, you're getting tricked up by the graphics of MXGP 2020. And yeah, obviously the physics are a little more free in that game. You got some more leaning forward and backwards. The graphics are way better. Yes to all those things. But you got to remember, this game came out like 3 or 4 years before MXGP 2020. There shouldn't be any aspects of this game that are better than MXGP 2020. You know what I'm saying? We went from MXGP 3 to Supercross 1 to MXGP Pro, Supercross 2, MXGP 2019, Supercross 3, then to MXGP 2020. So the fact that there's been that many games between this game and MXGP 2020, there should be nothing that's better about this game than MXGP 2020. And the fact that there is some things that you can point to, definitely the terrain deformation, because it's basically non-existent in MXGP 2020. The fact that there's anything like that in a game that's, 3 or 4 years older is just insane. It's just insane. And that's where you see a lot of these people talking about how, MXGP 3 was the bomb and shit like that. That's why they're saying things like that, because there are definitely elements of this game you just scratch your head on how they messed it up so bad in some of these newer milestone games, right? Even Supercross 3, Supercross 4, they don't have this level of terrain deformation. Visually, they might. Supercross 3 might have this level, like, visually, but it doesn't have where it'll actually make a rut, where it'll actually... And, of course, this is no reflex level terrain deformation. This is not, Southwick 30 lap, this, or Sandwick, let me get it right, Sandwick, the Southwick replica default track on reflex, right? This is no Sandwick, 30 lap with a full gate of dudes. There ain't nothing going to do anything even remotely like that in any of these milestone games. Reflex is definitely the king when it comes to terrain deformation of any motocross game out there, period. But I definitely certainly do think that MXGP 3 is the most / best terrain deformation that we have in any of these milestone games. So, but yeah, either way, you can see these ruts starting to go here a little on the inside. I know on that last rut tester video, it definitely took us like 15 laps before we really started noticing it making an actual, any kind of a grabbable rut in the corner. I had to really get on the brakes right there to get the bike to stop. And of course, this is like, the most traction grippable, tacky, tires biting into the dirt milestone game we've ever had before. So it does kind of give you even more of a vibe of feeling like you're digging into a rut in this game than it would any other milestone game, even when you're not even in a terrain deformed rut. You see what I'm saying? So that definitely plays into the feeling of this game somewhat, for sure. Not really got a whole lot of ruts forming. And this track, like I said, may kind of end up being a little bit more of a soft dirt vibe, with it being the more wet, mud puddly type feeling to it. So either way, I'll come back in about 5 laps and we'll see what's happened to the track here. Okay, so here we are about 3 or 4 more laps deep. And no pun intended, I just had to show you how deep the ruts were getting here. This track definitely seems like it's doing more than that other track we was on, for damn sure. You'll notice it here in a couple of these corners. That one right there, I think hitting up kind of up the middle of the line and then going towards the outside of the line helps out quite a bit. But yeah, you just can't help but think, like, how did they go from this to like how the terrain deformation is in MXGP 2020. How do you even do that, Milestone? Like, I'm just so confused at how does that even happen? Like, seriously, how the fuck does that even happen? Like, how can you not just throw back in at least this good of terrain deformation back into MXGP 2020? You know, at least at the minimum, you'd have thought they would have still had this kind of terrain deformation in their motocross games. But no, it's went even backwards. It's went even less. That corner right there, you can see it starting to get it going on, dog. This corner right here, not as much. Definitely a couple corners it's doing it a little more than other corners, which is cool because it kind of gives you a little bit of variation, you know what I'm saying? This corner for the finish line's definitely got it. It's got 3 or 4 coming out of there. So we're probably on like lap 8 or 9 right here, somewhere around the damn near halfway point of the race. You could save 15% on your Geico insurance. Okay. So, yeah, I'm puzzled by this. I'm demortally puzzled at the fact that it's just, how do you go from this to it being basically non-existent in these newer milestone games? I'm just so confused. So confused by that. Even Supercross 4. I mean, it ain't even half of this right here. Like, I mean, yeah, Supercross 4, okay. What are we doing? You know, even Supercross 4, yeah, it has more than MXGP 2020, but, like, it still ain't nothing like this. Man, they have got to. I'm talking, it's a must at this point for them to get back to an actual terrain deformation system in their next milestone game. That should be like their #1 focus at this point. I'm talking no shits, no doubt about it. Like, they have got to do it. There's just no excuse for it. You've already done it before, Milestone. It's already here. And yeah, this is not like the most amazing terrain deformation system ever, but like, you certainly can't go from this back to whatever the heck it is that you're doing now. Like, that just, nothing about that makes any sense. It's like you're either just being super lazy or you don't want to try to like carry over this kind of a terrain deformation system through your games because it's, you know, the coding of it is too complicated or whatever. Or, you know, you went to a new game engine and you can't carry over the same deformation into a new game engine. Whatever it was that caused you to not be able to carry at least this much terrain deformation through to your next game, man, that's just lazy as hell. Like, there is just absolutely no excuse for it, dude. But, you know, I'm just a milestone hater, guys, right? But they can just totally revert their terrain deformation system in their game to the point to where it's non-existent. And literally 4 games ago, it was 5 times what it is in the current games. But no, I'm just a milestone hater, guys. Just a milestone hater. You know what it is. Spencer could never love these milestone games. He can just not accept, he can't accept anything, man. That's Spencer. He's just a hater. He's just a hater, bro. Remember those days, right? Remember those days when everybody was saying that? Back when I was, you know, being real about when the first Supercross game came out and it had literally no inertia to the bike at all, and a hit-a-button play the same animation whip system over and over and over, and you guys were just foaming at the mouth because it was this new official Supercross game, right? Oh, and now I come to find out Spencer was right about all that shit. Every bit of that shit. And they've proved it with all the improvements that they've made with Supercross 2 and then to Supercross 3. You know, actually giving you movement on the bike and turning both your thumbsticks the same direction to whip. I can't tell you how many people fought me over that. Whenever I was telling Milestone, why the hell can you not whip by turning both your thumbsticks the same direction like you do in every other motocross game? There were so many of those Milestone fanboys saying, Spencer, they're trying to do something different. They're trying to go down a different road with letting you turn both your thumbsticks the opposite directions to whip, and it's more realistic. And dude, they don't need to change anything about that, right? And now here we are. Now you can turn both your thumbsticks the same direction to whip. Of course you can now. Of course you can, because why the hell shouldn't you be able to? It's just like, good Lord Almighty. Now you can actually lean forward and backwards on the bike. Now there's actually inertia to the bike. Now there's actually multiple types of whips you can do in the games. Now you're actually jumping off the ground and there's a risk to coming up short on the jumps instead of just bouncing off of a cloud like you do in the first Supercross game. Oh, man, I tell you what. The old Spency boy, I mean, I tell you what, man, I don't know how I could have been any more spot on about these milestone games this whole entire time. I really don't know, other than them making the changes that I've been telling them to make for years, and them finally starting to do it with Supercross 3 and Supercross 4. I don't know how much more I can prove what I was saying the whole time, because if I was so wrong, then why the hell did they change their game in all the ways that I've been telling them to change their games for the past, 5 years? Why would they do that if I was so wrong? I mean, you answer that question, man. Oh, man. But either way. So, as you can see, you're probably on lap 12, 13 here. So, yeah, it's what I'm noticing it doing the most here on this track is it's kind of like it's making, that kind of like building up that berm a little bit on the outside so you can kind of go up the inside or the middle and then kind of drag yourself to that little bit raised outside area of the outside of the berm, and you can kind of bank off of that just a little bit. It's kind of what I'm noticing that I can do here. That corner hasn't really done that much. It may be in some of the corners that already had a little bit more of a raised up berm on the outside. I'm not really sure. This corner, really, good Lord. That corner's got it going on, bro. I think there's even a middle line that you can dig into there as well. This corner, there's not a whole lot to dig into. This one, there may be just a little bit to dig into there. So either way, I'm going to run another 3 or 4 laps and then come back. Okay, so here we are getting a little more towards the end of the race. And you can see the bike trying to get a little bit out of shape. You can see just a smidgen of kind of a little bit of a roughness vibe that starts to develop once you get, really deep in these laps right here. That's one aspect of this terrain deformation, really any of these terrain deformations on any of these milestone games. I wish they would create more of a roughness feeling, more of an actual braking bump. That little single right there is actually starting to wear down on the actual jump face itself, which is interesting. But yeah, this is the only real milestone game that's got any kind of a smidgen of a roughness kind of developing feeling to it. There's just a smidgen of a roughness feeling that starts to kind of get formed when you really get this terrain deformation ruts going in some of these corners. But yeah, what it's basically doing is it's just lowering a pretty wide area on the track, just kind of lowers that down a little bit, and then so you're basically just hitting the outside of that lowered area, right? It's not really making a whole lot of individual ruts themselves. It's more of a just lowering down the track on a certain area, and then it kind of creates the sense of having an outside rut / berm or whatever you want to call it, right? And then if the AI really goes in 2 different areas, it can give you a little bit of a feeling like there's somewhat of an inside line to hit. But this is certainly not really going in individual ruts. And there's not a whole lot of roughness, not a whole lot of ruts going up the jump faces, but it's certainly better than nothing, and certainly better than a lot of these newer milestone games. man, when you go back and ride on this, you just think, how the hell do you even ride on some of those newer milestone games where there's just nothing that happens to the track at all? One thing I will say is definitely with some of the newer milestone games, they have gotten more into doing like more, you know, character to the tracks, more pre-made little rough areas and kind of little pre-made kicker type things on the jump faces and stuff. They have done a little bit more of that, you know, so the track has a little bit more of a kind of like a character rough type style feeling to it from the first lap, but they've reverted on all the terrain deformation so much to the point to where you don't have any of that really going on the track. So it's kind of like they've made the games better in a certain way, but then a lot worse in another way. You see what I'm saying? So either way, but like, yeah, there's definitely some of these corners where you really got to slow down for that bike to actually, you know, bank into that rut in any kind of a way. You really got to slow down or you're just going to go right through it. You're just going to blow right through the rut. We should be like lap 17 or 18 right here, so we're definitely getting close to the end. But yeah, I mean, without a doubt, they have got to bring more of this kind of vibe back to those newer milestone games. I mean, it's just unbelievable at this point. Whoa! Finally actually crashed on it there a little bit. I was trying to make sure I hit that rut, and then it kind of had a little squirrely part at the very end of the rut there. But yeah, when you compare this to reflex terrain deformation, this is still kind of laughable. I mean, let's just keep it real. And then when you compare this to like MXGP 2020, it makes MXGP 2020 laughable. So that should kind of go to show you, you know, the spectrum and the range there of how different a game like MXGP 2020's terrain deformation system is to Reflex's terrain. I mean, it's just like, oh my word. Oh my word. But you got a couple ruts. That's probably one of the best corners right there before the finish line. There's like 4 or 5 somewhat grabbable type little spots there you can somewhat get into. But yeah, and then it's kind of doing similar trend to the other track where it starts kind of smooth everything out once you get, you know, towards the closer to the lap like 19-20 range. It definitely starts to smooth everything back out again, so the ruts are actually less grabbable. They're the most grabbable, they're the most like actually feeling like a physical rut on the track, anywhere from probably like lap 15 to 18. That's about where I would say the ruts are the absolute best. So it really wouldn't matter if you could like restart and keep the deformation that you had, because it's just going to start to smooth it out. Like it wouldn't matter if you went in there and ran 100 laps on time attack. You know, it's going to get to that point anyways where it's just going to start smoothing it back out versus continuing to dig it deeper and deeper and deeper. You see what I'm saying? So, either way, man, I appreciate all the support on these videos. We're going to keep this ball rolling. We ain't going to drop the ball. Smithy Boy's way too focused on this shit now. This is like all I do now, dog. It really, really is. I mean, this is like the most focused I've ever been on this YouTube shit. Just got to get a couple more things going and we'll be back to full-blown clicking, live streaming 4 or 5 days a week. There's the finish. We'll get back to doing everything, but either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.